All right, welcome to Bleav in Clemson football. I am Will Vandervort, and alongside me tonight is a special guest, a longtime friend of the program, former Clemson insider reporter, now sports writer and rodeo extraordinaire expert, Alex Dodd. A lot of you guys might know Alex from back in the day when he did the Alex Dodd Show up in Travelers Rest. Longtime Greenville native and also a Clemson graduate. So, Alex, thanks for joining me, buddy.
Oh, it's good to be on here. Out in Colorado now. It's getting ready to rain. Pretty far from the home of the Tigers, but still stay abreast of everything that's going on in Clemson football.
Yeah, and I talk about rain. It rained a little bit here tonight. Finally, we've only had rain like twice in the last month or so. So it was nice to kind of have some rain and be able to get the grass wet, if you will, and things of that nature. So we're glad to have you guys with us and on this rainy night in Clemson, South Carolina, or wherever you are in the upstate or across the country, as Alex is over in Colorado. We appreciate you joining us. We got a good show tonight as we're going to talk about the AP Top 25 preseason poll, which was released yesterday. We're going to kind of go over that and, maybe some teams that surprised us that are where they're ranked and maybe some teams that surprised us that are not ranked. We're going to go through that poll, though. We're going to talk about comments Heather Denich had regarding Clemson football. If you haven't heard that today, she was on Get Up Show this morning and was asked a question about basically which teams kind of surprised her about being in the poll. And she had some very interesting comments that she said about the Clemson Tigers that I was a little surprised about. So we're going to have that. Mac Lain, the former Clemson Tiger, ACC Network analyst, he chimed in on that later on in the day, that very same subject about what Heather said. And so we got what Eric's comments were. He was pretty fired up. As you can imagine, being a former Clemson Tiger himself, but also kind of fired up about the conference as a whole. Also, Alex, he's kind of tired of some stuff that's going on. And then finally, we'll wrap up the show going over Clemson's first scrimmage. They had a stadium scrimmage last Saturday. Dabo spoke to the media afterwards. I was there for that. And we're going to talk about what Dabo said about what we learned, what we heard from others that were there that watched it. So we got a pretty good show here today. So we appreciate you guys being with us. Before we go any further, I want to go ahead and talk about our sponsor at Bet Online. BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, including Major League Baseball and golf. You can go get all the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Also, keep in mind, right now, the props are already coming out for college football, for the NFL. You got preseason football games going on right now as well in the NFL. So all kinds of things to go over and do at betonline.ag. You can get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport that's out there. So head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on all the action. Again, that's BetOnline, betonline.ag, where the game starts. Also like to thank our sponsors, the Clemson Insider. As always, appreciate Robert and everybody over there helping us out and allowed us to use the platforms to get on live here and talk football with you guys. It's always fun to come in and do that and talk football. And Alex, need to ask just your thoughts, just kind of initial thoughts now that football season is here. And how do you like it that now we're talking football, where people are at football practice, the NFL's got preseason games? How excited are you that finally, football's here for us?
Man, I'm always excited about college football season rolling around, ready for some NFL too. We talk about football year round. 365 days we're talking about football, but it's good to have new stuff to talk about. And here in just a few days, it's going to feel like a blink of an eye before we're watching Florida State and Georgia Tech kicking it off in Dublin, and before you know it, the Tigers and Bulldogs will be squaring off, and everything will be in full swing. Man, it's just good to talk about it, good to hear about it, and I know for you, it's good to be out on the practice field this time of the year, even if it's 100 degrees at Jervey Meadows with no rain for 10 days. It's still good for football to be back.
Yeah, I always enjoy football season because it you have that the smell of the grass is freshly cut. The lines have just been chalked, if you will. You hear the cleats on the concrete as they're coming over to the field. And, I always love hearing the sound of the cleats as they're walking over to the field and stuff like that. So it's always like football just has a different feel to it. And today actually woke up a nice, cool, crisp morning here in South Carolina. So
it's one of those days that just reminds you that the start of football is here.
Yeah, we're still going to have our hot days, and it's going to be 85 plus, and Clemson and Georgia is going to kick off, and it's probably going to be 190 degrees in Atlanta. But there's just enough of a tease that teases you that fall's around the corner, football's around the corner, and they're going to start playing for real here in 18 days, I Bleav that's right. 18 days for the Tigers when they open up against Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But what is it? 11 days until Florida State and Georgia Tech kick things off in Ireland. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a second when we kind of go over the preseason AP poll, and you can see it scrolling across the bottom if you haven't seen it. We're going to kind of go over just a little bit, but real fast, we'll go ahead and tell you what the top 10 was. Georgia ranked number 1. No surprise. The Bulldogs receiving 46 first-place votes, followed by Ohio State at number 2, Oregon at number 3. Ohio State got 15 first-place votes, and Oregon got 1. Those are the only 3 teams to receive first-place votes. Texas comes in at number 4, followed by Alabama at number 5. Ole Miss coming in at number 6, followed by Notre Dame at number 7. Penn State at number 8. Michigan at number 9, and then Florida State at number 10. Alex, I wanted to go ahead and kind of ask you in that top 10, what teams do you think are maybe a little overrated, don't need to be in the top 10 right now? At least going into the season. Maybe later on they become top 10 teams. We all truly don't know. This is just our opinions. But what teams do you think?
Well, as I kind of look at it, the way that I think about things in the preseason is like what you said. I think of teams that maybe are a little overinflated, some teams that maybe had a rough finish to the year, and then for whatever reason, people are coming out and projecting them high. I think the other thing with the transfer portal, you have to think about pieces that people added, and if value is being ascribed to a player just because he's a transfer. I think we're seeing that a lot the last couple of years is if somebody transfers, people assume that guy's just going to be, better than he was the year before, or that the guys on a roster are going to be the same as they were the year before. So teams that I think maybe surprised me a little bit in that top 10, probably Notre Dame being so high. I'd have them in the top 15. I maybe would have them at 11 or 12. I don't know about 7 is a little high for me. Mm-hmm. Kind of same thing with Penn State, seeing Penn State so high. Kind of a thing where, I want James Franklin to prove it to me. He's had a lot of good seasons. He's had consistency in that program. He's brought a lot of hype back to that program, but I want to see him go out and do it consistently. So that's another one that's kind of surprising to me. Michigan at number 9. I know they're defending national champions, but do we really think that they're the 9th best team in America? Not quite sure. Another kind of prove it to me case. I think those teams in the top 5, really the top 6, I think those teams are accurate. Those are the teams that I would have in the top 6. Maybe would change the order a little bit. But those are the teams that I think everybody's kind of ascribed as that first tier of teams, and then everybody else kind of falling in behind.
I'm still a show me kind of guy with Lane Kiffin. I think they're still ranked a little too high at number 6. I think they got a good team, and I think they have a chance to have a really good season, but they haven't done it. They've never won the big game. He's never won the big game, and it's those big games that get you into that top 5 ranking, right? That make you a legitimate contender for a national championship. And we've never seen it from Lane Kiffin. And no matter where he's been, no matter where he's coached, he just can't win the big games. So until he shows me he can win a big game, that's a little too high for me with Ole Miss. I want to see it. Notre Dame is definitely too high. Why is it every year Notre Dame lost as many games last year as Clemson. Notre Dame has more question marks than Clemson. More question marks. They got a quarterback who, he's a heck of a runner and everything, but he completed less than 55% of his passes last year at Duke before he got injured. It's not like, he's going to come in there and you expect him to, sling it for all of a sudden he's become, Jared Allen or something. He's going to be slinging it for 50,000 yards or something like that. I just don't see it. Not with the scheme they run at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's got a very good defense. I know that, but I'm just not sold yet to say they're a top 10 team. We're going to find out right off the bat because they open up against Texas A&M on the road when they're bringing in a new coach and all that.
What makes the voters think that Notre Dame is twice as good as they were at the end of last year? Because that's what they're saying. They were 14th at the end of last season, the AP poll, and now they bump up to 7. That's 7 spots. Do the math. They're saying they're twice as good as they were at the end of last year, and I'm just not buying it. I mean, how many times do we have to buy into the same narrative with this team that this is going to be the year? Look at all the pieces.
They haven't won a national championship since 1988. So could we stop saying Notre Dame deserves to be ranked alongside Alabama and Ohio State, now Michigan, because Michigan finally got over the hump. But heck, Michigan's won 2 national championships since Notre Dame won its last. And by the way, Michigan didn't win it till last year. Michigan's last one was 1997. So let's keep that in perspective, right? Like, it's like to say Notre Dame is like, oh, they're top 10 team every year. No, I just don't. I got to see it to believe it. Penn State's another one. James Franklin, dude, you're great. You can beat everybody else in the Big Ten except Ohio State and Michigan.
You're the best non-win coach in the history of college football.
Do you know what 9 wins got Tommy Bowden at Clemson?
I'm keenly aware. Got him fired.
Got him fired. 9 wins don't cut it. Like at some point, Penn State going to say, dude, come on, dude, we're paying you a lot of money. It's time to stop winning just 9 games. We need you to go play for a championship and stuff. So like, I mean, at some point, 9 wins is not enough at Penn State. It should never be enough at Penn State, and so, I just don't get why they're ranked number 8. And then I'm with you with Michigan. Don't really understand that they lost everybody, lost their head coach. They lost their quarterback. They lost their best wide receiver. They lost like 7 starters on defense. I'm like, okay, how in the world is this a top 10
It's
team?
a completely different team. I get it. They're the defending national champion. But at the same time, at some point, you've got to look at the X's and O's. You got to look at the Jimmies and Joes and just see that it's not the same team. I mean, how many times have we been through this? And we had like LSU when they won the national championship, and everybody's putting them in the top 10 at the start of the year, and you saw what happened to Ed Orgeron in the aftermath of that. We've seen this song and dance before.
Yeah, we got Jay over on on YouTube saying Notre Dame is getting love for upgrading at wide receiver by taking from the same room hated on by the media. Yep, we're going to get to that in a second, Jay, but you're right. And you're exactly right. They got Bo Collins, and all of a sudden, hey, they got Bo Collins. Oh, my gosh. Notre Dame has just up. But if Bo Collins was playing for Clemson, he's not even the 5th best receiver on the team.
Well, that was what I was kind of alluding to earlier when I said people think you get a transfer and that guy automatically is better because he's in a new place. I get Riley Leonard.
Shiny new toy.
Riley Leonard at Notre Dame makes me excited. Like I'm kind of excited to see what he looks like there. But Bo Collins at Notre Dame, Bo Collins is a great guy. I mean, he's a
great
consistent
kid. Great
player.
Man.
I mean, he was the heart of Clemson's offense as a freshman.
Right.
But since then, the injuries have been an issue. Hasn't been able to find that rhythm.
He's a number 3 or number 4 receiver at best. He's not one that makes you a top 10 team all of a sudden.
Right.
Now maybe he comes in and proves us wrong. I don't think so. I don't think he will. But, we'll see what happens. But that's not the reason to make Notre Dame a top 10 team. Bo Collins is definitely not the reason. And then Florida State's number 10, and then we'll get to the rest of the top 25 here in a second. Florida State's number 10. Florida State, just like Michigan, lost everybody and their mama. They did. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like they lost everybody. They lost their obviously their quarterback. Then they lost their top 2 wide receivers. They lost their running backs. Now they bring back a good offensive line. They lost all 3 of their best tight ends. Now defense, they lost their 2 best players on the defensive line. They lost a couple guys on the back end as well. What was it? They lost 11 players or something like that in the NFL draft. I mean, that's a hard thing. And that's hard to replace when you're not Alabama and you're not Clemson yet. You're not to that point where your roster can handle losing that many players in 1 year and expect the next year to be a national championship contender. I think Florida State's going to be okay. I think they'll be a good football team, but they're not going to be a great football team this year. And I think, that'll prove evident in week 0 when they play Georgia Tech.
And this kind of brings up another point about this poll, something I found interesting. It seems like, if you think back to AP polls of years past, you could kind of chalk out these top 10 teams or top 10 teams. It's generally what you thought in years past. But it seems like in this era of college football, and maybe it's just the roster transition that happens every offseason, but there are just so many question marks. And the further you get down this list in the top 25, it seems like the more question marks you get.
Mm-hmm.
What's a guy going to look like in a new spot? What's a guy going to look like with a new system? These are questions that we can't really answer. There's only so many practices that these media members get to see, so they don't really have any insight to it. So it really seems like a guessing game for where these teams go. 10 to 15, maybe even a little earlier than that. And it is interesting, given that the coaches poll was the same 25 teams as the AP poll.
They do, and ranked the top 10 is pretty much almost identical. After Florida State, Missouri comes in at number 11, followed by Utah at number 12, LSU at number 13, Clemson at number 14, Tennessee at 15, Oklahoma 16, Oklahoma State at 17, Kansas State at 18, Miami at 19, number 20 is Texas A&M, number 21 is Arizona, number 22 is Kansas, number 23 is USC, and that is the real USC, the one out in California. And North Carolina State is number 24, and Iowa is at number 25. Alex, as I look at the top, let's see, me and you both agree that Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan, more so Notre Dame, Michigan, and Florida State probably are not top 10 teams. So of those teams behind them, who would you put in the top 15? Would it be top 10? Would it be Missouri, Utah, LSU, Tennessee, Clemson? Who would you put in that top 10 to replace those three teams?
Well, I think Missouri and Utah, I would definitely put in that top 10. Well, that is if Cam Rising is the same quarterback at 30 that he was at 21. But Utah, definitely. Missouri, they're bringing back a lot of talent. They saw a retooled roster last year and had some success. I agree with Jay, who keeps voting for Iowa. How many times do we have to see that?
It's obviously a defensive guy.
It was Will. Just kidding.
I'm not a voter this year, so it's not me.
After that, I do feel like this kind of chunk of teams that you just read off, like 11 to 16, maybe even 17. There's not a lot of separation in my mind. Big question marks for a lot of those teams. Man, I don't know who that third team that I'd put in the top 10 would be.
Well, I got an idea. I mean, okay, I would say I would agree with you. Missouri definitely is. I think they're Utah. I think with Rising coming back is definitely a top 10 team, especially with that defense, the way they play defense over there. And then I have no problem putting either LSU or Tennessee in there. No. I have no issues. Tennessee, I think, is pretty exciting. I think they've got one of the best defensive lines in the SEC, if not the best. They got an offense that's going to be able to put up some numbers. They got an exciting young quarterback that's going to be playing. Tennessee, I can see sneaking into, if I look at the top 15 teams and I say what team out of that 11 to 15 range could be contending for a national championship, my answer would be Tennessee. I really believe that. I think Tennessee's got the team to kind of contend this year. Clemson, I think, is a top 10 team when it's all said and done at the end of the year. But I think right now, I think it's fair to keep Clemson out of the top 10. So I wouldn't put them in there at this moment in time. Let's see what Clemson can do. LSU's got it on offense. I believe Brian Kelly, that's what he does. Defensively, though, I'm not sold on them yet. I mean, they couldn't stop a nosebleed last year. And I want to see it before I think they're a top 10 team. So if I had to pick a team, I definitely would pick Tennessee to be that third team. I think Tennessee is ranked too low on this list, personally. So we'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong later on. I'm with you. I think, though, when you look at number 7 through number 16, you can even throw Oklahoma State in there at 17. I think that's all even. I think you can mix it up. You can put whoever you want where. I think all those teams are the exact same teams, and I think it's going to show throughout the season. Another team to watch out for that maybe can move up the rankings that I think is going to surprise some people is Miami. I think Miami, again, I don't want to put the curse of Will
The
Vandervort
U is
on
back.
Miami.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
Will
I'm not
said the U
saying
is
that
back.
because they've burned me too many times, but Miami is they do look like they got a pretty doggone good roster, better than they've had in years past. And I think they're a team that could surprise some people. NC State's another one I think could really surprise some people. And I think being ranked number 24 maybe is a little too low for them. And then,
I think
other teams.
Kansas State has some interesting pieces too. You got Avery Johnson, who everybody wants to talk about Will Howard going to Ohio State, but nobody wants to talk about how Avery Johnson was probably going to be the guy to win the job.
Right.
So you got Avery Johnson back at quarterback, and you got DJ Giddens, the running back. They always play pretty good defense at Kansas State. That Big 12 is exciting because it just seems like a wide open race. I mean, it kind of seems like that in the ACC too, but I don't know. It just feels like the Big 12. It's hard to pick a clear favorite that you think is heads and shoulders above.
I think Utah's head and shoulders above everybody.
Is Cam Rising going to be the same quarterback at 30 that he was at 21?
At 25.
That's my question with Utah. I know they're going to win 9 games, kind of that same conversation, but are they going to be a 10, 11 win team? Are they going to be a conference champion is a different conversation.
Right. No, I agree with you. So that's the top 25. And by the way, some teams on the outside looking in that I think maybe could be ranked. Louisville, they come in next on the teams receiving votes. Virginia Tech, Boise State. SMU is an interesting team. I'm high on SMU. I think they can. I know a lot of people say, well, they're 0 for their last 6 against, Power 4 teams. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But they're playing in their ACC, the back half of their schedule is really easy. It's manageable. And I could see them roll through that back half of their schedule undefeated. I really could. Yep. So they're an interesting team to watch. Surprised like a team like Liberty didn't make the poll. So the group of 5s really weren't represented at all in this top 25.
No.
And that's kind of interesting to me because they're starting off behind the 8 ball, right? Because it's the top 5 conferences champions get that automatic berth. Well, just like the group of 5 is like saying, well, man, unless the ACC or the Big 12 just totally eat each other alive and everybody's beating everybody, that's the only way they're going to try to get up into the top 4.
Can you remember an AP poll in, I don't know, the last 10 years that hasn't had a group of 5 team in the top 25? Because I can't. I mean, I'm like racking my brain to think, and maybe somebody's going to comment on here and say, "Oh, it's 3 years ago," but I can't remember one. There's always some team in that 20 to 25 range, from the group of 5 that people are really high on, and there's 0 teams.
They're behind the 8 ball right now. I mean, they're probably already like, well, we know we're going on the road to start the playoffs. Whoever gets in the playoff, right? Because see, once the top 4 are automatic bids, and then they go to one of the bowl games, they get the automatic bye, and they go to a bowl game. The number 5 seed or the number 5 conference champion isn't necessarily the number 5 seed.
Right.
It's how they're ranked in the college football playoff rankings. So a team like Liberty, for instance, could be ranked number 12 or 13. Excuse me, not 13, because they have to be in the top 12.
Well, they could be ranked. Well, they could be the highest ranked one and be 15th.
That's right.
And they're playing in that 12 spot.
And they have to play in the 12 spot and go on the road. So they're kind of starting behind the 8 ball already. And this is where I think polls are unfair, because even though the college football playoff committee will say, well, no, it doesn't really matter. It does, because it gives them what? It gives them a foundation to play off of. And if you don't believe that that's not what happens, then you're kidding yourself. They have a foundation. This poll, the AP poll, gives them a foundation to play off of that they will use going forward. And when they release their rankings in late October, early November, it'll be based off the top 25 poll, and that's why they're very similar.
I mean, this is the way that we categorize teams going into the year. You're already seeing it all over ESPN.
Yeah.
All over
The SEC
Athletic
and Big
on
Ten already
three.
got 6 teams each in the playoff.
Well, they're talking about, this team plays 6 ranked teams. This team plays 4 ranked teams in back-to-back weeks. It's like, regardless of the fact that we have no idea what's going to happen when we get to that point in the schedule.
Yeah, we don't. Sorry if you saw me mocking. I was my mouth moving, but didn't hear any volume because I was fussing at my dog.
Typical.
Typical. But anyway, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see like how the poll influences the top 25 poll this year, because it's a top 15 is very important, because now everybody's going to look at the top 15 and who's in, who's out. It's no longer a top 4 and who's in, who's out. It's the top 15, who's in, who's out. And so that top 15 is going to be really scrutinized. And right now you're looking at it, and you would say Clemson's the odd man looking out right now. They're at 14. And if that were to stay true, Florida State were to win the conference and Clemson finished 14th, Clemson wouldn't make the college football playoff, because a group of 5 team is going to get in with one of the automatic berths. So that takes another spot. And then we all know the rest of the spots are going to go to the SEC and Big Ten.
I mean, if this poll shows you anything, it's that. I mean, look at the top 10. It's SEC, Big Ten, and Florida State.
That's exactly right.
So the intentions are clear, in my mind, at least for the perception that we're going into the year with. And I can't really foresee a scenario where, an Ole Miss team loses 3 games and doesn't get in. Unless they're losing
4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, and then Notre Dame, which is basically ACC, and Florida State rounds out your top 10.
Yep.
It's no Big 12 team. Big 12 didn't get its first rank until number 12 at Utah. So they're kind of playing behind the 8 ball too a little bit, when you think about it that way, because they're already starting off as a number 4 seed. ACC's getting a number 3 seed at this point in time. And then when you look at it after that, you got a number 11, you got SEC. 13, you got SEC. 14 is ACC. That's just the second ACC. And at 15, you got SEC. So in the top 15, that's 7 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams. You see the separation starting to take place here?
Oh, yeah.
And then you got Oklahoma, SEC, by the way. So that's 8 now for the SEC. And then finally Oklahoma State comes in and Kansas State come in and give you the second and third Big 12 teams. And then Miami comes in and gives you the 4th ACC team, or the 3rd ACC team, excuse me. And then you got Arizona to get the Big 12, another team, Kansas, another 12 team. Then finally, way down at number 22 is Southern Cal, the 5th Big 10 team.
Yep.
I mean, that's a big drop off to go all the way from number 9, Michigan, all the way down to you don't get another Big 10 team until you see Southern Cal. So the SEC is clearly getting a lot more love than everybody else, and the ACC. So I guess the team I think it's like, so that you got 6 from the Big 10, 4 from the ACC, and I think 4 from, let me see, 1, 2.
Will's doing math. Everybody let him think.
1, 2, 3. Just 3 Big 12 teams.
Yep.
No, 4. Oklahoma State.
4, yeah.
So 4. So the SEC's, and I left out Texas A&M in there, so that's another SEC team. So 9 SEC teams in the rankings. To the next best team, next closest is the Big 12 at 6. The Big 10 at 6, and then the ACC and Big 12 both have 4 each. So that's crazy, man. It's just it's obviously showing you who everybody wants in the playoffs, what conferences they want. It's the Big 2, and everybody else is just kind of left behind. Let's just call it what it is. And that's why Clemson and Florida State are suing the ACC. Anyway, but we won't get into that because we're going to talk football, not lawsuits.
Please, I don't want to talk any more lawsuits. That's the other good thing about football actually starting is we can stop talking legalese because it'll be a little bit before anything happens again on that front.
Oh, yeah, we got a ways before any of that stuff happens, before all that. So, but speaking of, we were talking about top 25, and so today, as we know, Clemson's ranked number 14. So on Get Up Show this morning on the ESPN, Heather Denich was one of her and Paul Feinbaum were the regular Tuesday guests where they talk college football with Mike Greenberg. And so Greeny asked Heather who she thought was maybe overrated and didn't need to be where they're ranked. And this was her answer. If you look there, and Alex, you can read it as I am removing the other banner that's going as we speak.
Heather Denich said, "Why so much love for the Clemson Tigers? They have 4 conference losses last year, which is as many as they've had combined in the past 6 seasons."
And she continued,
"People keep telling me their defense is going to be great. Their defense is always pretty good, but they've got to get a quarterback."
And she continued,
"Until we see offensive improvement, I don't see why there should be so much love for the Clemson Tigers."
Alex, when has the number 14 team gotten a lot of love? I mean,
that's what I asked you before the show
started. They're not even
started.
favored to win the ACC.
It's like, when did becoming number 14 on the outside looking into the playoff become such a luxury?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out.
Because I think there's no way that Greeny was asking that about the number 14 team.
No, he thought she was going to say something about Penn State or Notre Dame or
Florida
Michigan.
State or any of these other teams ranked ahead of Clemson that have huge question marks coming into the year.
Right. Why Clemson? Why did she? And listen, I'd love to have Heather. I know you might be watching this on my Twitter. I don't know. Heather's a friend of mine, and Heather, I'd love for you to come on and talk about it if you want to. But I don't understand why you use Clemson as an example of a team that's overrated. Maybe they are. Maybe you think they're 6-6. Maybe that's where you're going with this. But to me, the number 14 team in the country doesn't really seem like an overrated team to me. But here's the part that really got me. This quote right here. People keep telling me their defense is going to be great. Their defense is always pretty good. Now, Heather, you know better than that comment. I know you didn't probably mean to say it the way it came out. Their defense is pretty good. Pretty good means you're probably top 25, top 50 defense at best. You're somewhere between 25 and 50. Clemson consistently is top 15 in total defense almost every year. Top 15 in scoring defense almost every year. Clemson's one of the best defenses in the country and has been for over a decade. So to say, and then Clemson's history as a program, even when they were having the bad days that fans didn't love, the defense was always better than pretty good. Clemson's always, only for a couple years under Kevin Steele were they not pretty good. And they've always been really, really good to great.
When Clemson's defense is pretty good, they fire the defensive coordinator.
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I was really, to me, that's the verbiage that stood out to me was like, well, the defense is always pretty good. Heather, have you just been so watching just Alabama and Georgia the last couple of years, you forgot that there's other teams too that are really good at defense?
Well, and where did all of this Clemson love come from? Have you seen anybody saying Clemson's going to compete for a national championship?
I have not seen one person, including people who cover Clemson, such as myself, say
including Bleav in Clemson football or Off the Cuff with Alex and Will. I don't think any of those people have been giving a ton of love to Clemson.
If you picked our top 4 right now, our top 10, Clemson would not be in it. I mean, that's for me or you.
That's what we both just said. It's like, man, it's pretty hard to pick between Tennessee and LSU to spot, We both put a hedge between Clemson and the top 10. I don't know anybody. There might be a couple people that I know that think that, but those people are just saying that out of hope and wishing.
Yeah. I think, it's just crazy that people are saying that Clemson, that somebody out there thinks that Clemson is, I just haven't heard it, that Clemson's a national championship contender. No. I haven't heard it. Clemson's an ACC championship contender. Absolutely they are. They got a chance to win the ACC and get the college football playoff, but that's because of the new rules to the college football playoff. If this was the final, just 4 teams, no way Clemson's getting in it.
No, Clemson's not in the conversation right now.
No.
It's the same as those other teams that we talked about. It's like you got to go prove it. But that's another thing, too, in this whole conversation about the top 25 is, in your mind, does it feel different the way that we're talking about the top 25 because of the new structure playoff? Because to me, it does. Because I think in these past few years, you've just been looking at that top 4 team. You're looking at maybe 6 teams that you think are elite. Whereas now you have this 12-team structure and you're having to look at these automatic qualifiers. Kind of adds a little intrigue to the conversation for me. I like being able to talk about other teams.
Yeah, it does to me too. One thing I like about it is Dabo, though, when he you hear it like once a week. Dabo they talk about the college football playoff, and Dabo's like, yeah, it's a little different this year, and he'll say, we made it 6 years in a row when there was only 4 teams, and we're the only ones to ever do that. And Dabo's gonna be able to say he's the only one to do that for a long time.
Yep.
Because Dabo did what in college basketball circles, is considered one of great runs. Like if Mike Krzyzewski went 6 straight years to the Final Four, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody be talking about it. Clemson went, not Alabama, but Clemson, not Nick Saban, but Dabo Swinney, went 6 straight years to the college football playoff with only 4 teams. Now, here's the funny thing, Alex. That will never be mentioned on ESPN.
Oh, no.
That will never be mentioned because now everybody's going to talk about the playoffs, and they're like, yeah, Clemson went 6 times in a row at one point, but they'll never say when it was only 4 teams.
And they're going to be like, well, Ohio State's been 25 years in a row.
Yeah.
Because when is Ohio State not going to be in somebody's top 12?
Exactly. So it's like you'll never hear it worded that way ever again. But if it was Alabama that did it, I guarantee you we would hear it every day. I guarantee you we would have. So
that's another team too that we didn't talk about in the top 10.
Number 5.
That makes you raise a little bit of an eyebrow.
I almost did.
I don't know that I would move them out
roster.
of it.
They still have one of the best rosters in college football. And they got a coach who's really good with quarterbacks. And they got a quarterback who was pretty darn good last year. So you add those two together, you got a good defense, you got a good roster, you got a good quarterback, you got a head coach who's good with quarterbacks. Kind of like, I think they're going to be okay.
And he's a winner.
That's what he's a winner.
Throw that in there too. He's won every level.
Win. Yeah, he's won double-digit wins every year, but 1 year, and that was COVID.
Yep.
That's just nuts, man. That's just nuts. The guy's unbelievable. But anyway, so that's Heather's comments, and so we'll move on. So that led to
Will's Twitter skirmish.
That led to our good friend Eric Mac Lain, who played at Clemson, was on part of Clemson's 2015 team that finished as a national runner-up, losing to Alabama in the national championship game. And Eric's now with ACC Network. Eric is a great analyst. He knows his stuff. Eric likes to talk football. He doesn't like to talk circumstances or, just say things to say things. He likes to have something to back it up. Well, Eric came on William Quackenbush show on the Roar called Out of Bounds in the upstate of South Carolina today. And here's what Eric had to say. Alex, I'll let you read it as we go down here.
What does that mean? Is that top 50? Is pretty good top 20? What is pretty good? Because since I strapped a helmet on and played for the Tigers, Clemson has been top 7 every single year in Power 5.
And he's talking about Clemson's defense. He's like me. He was complex with Heather Denich's comment that Clemson's been pretty good on defense. Eric continued as he continued to talk about Heather Denich's rant. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, now I gotta read on the ticker.
Oh, I didn't know it was a ticker. My bad.
Start it over. They're one of the best, but they've got to get a quarterback.
I'll let you start this way. Hold on. My bad. Having editing problems here.
I was ready to speed read, Will. I was ready for it, to read it off the ticker.
I see that. All right, so why is it doing it this way? Oh, it did this to me earlier.
I got you. I got it pulled up over here.
Okay, go ahead.
What is that? That's the same one.
It's not picking up, man.
All right, here we go. This is what he said about the Cade Klubnik portion of the conversation.
I'll just turn this off and let it scroll. Go ahead.
They're one of the best, but they've got to get a quarterback. About that part, he said Cade Klubnik was the number 1 quarterback in his class, so I guess that's not good enough.
Yeah, and then he went on to and yeah, that's it. Okay, my bad. We're messing up. Apologize. Technical difficulties from the editor over here. I was not running things well on the news desk. So
what happens when you got sports writers doing TV?
It's not our forte. So anyway, Yeah. So Eric, though, I thought, like you said, was very open. He was very upset. Eric also continued in there talking about the ACC and how he's tired of Paul Feinbaum taking shots at ACC teams like Florida State and Clemson and the conference as a whole. Not Heather Denich necessarily, but others that have come on and have always. So he's like, it's always the ACC. It's not the Big Ten. It's not Michigan, as we just mentioned. Like, why is Michigan ranked number 9? It's not Notre Dame, like we just mentioned. It's not, Ole Miss, maybe, question marks. It's not Penn State, who's like totally never gotten over the hump, Penn State. It's always the ACC, Florida State, or Clemson that gets ripped on here. And Eric says, I'm kind of tired of it. And he even went on Twitter and says, how about you guys have me come on the show? I'm an ESPN employee. Let me come on in and represent the ACC if you want to have a good spirited debate. And I'm like, I had Eric's back. I'm like, you got it. Why not?
Yeah, it's kind of good to see. It's good to see Eric kind of speak up on the issue. If anybody knows anything about this, it'd be Eric. I mean, he's watching every team in the ACC. He went out to Cal Berkeley for the road show a couple weeks ago. ACC legend Cal. But if anybody knows this conference, if anybody knows Clemson football and what Clemson football means and what's going on in fall camp, it's going to be Eric Mac Lain. So why not bring him on there? Paul Feinbaum's probably never been to Clemson. I know Heather Denich has, but it's been a little while.
Right. But Heather's been. I've never seen Paul Feinbaum at the Bob Bradley press box. I've seen Heather Denich a bunch.
Yeah.
And, and so, Heather's a good reporter. I've always liked Heather. She's actually mentored some of, former students at Clemson, the Clemson Insider, Kayla Burns-Hefter for one. Kayla, shout out to you if you're out here watching. But she mentored Kayla, was great with Kayla, mentored Olivia. So she's helped some of our students, fellow students and colleagues that's worked with us that have, gone on and worked at ESPN themselves. And so, so that's why I'm saying Heather's a good reporter. She really is. She's good at what she does. Nobody knows the college football playoff better than Heather.
Yeah.
But I hate that Heather came on and I don't think she intentionally meant to attack Clemson, but
it is kind of in vogue. It's been in vogue the last few years to go out.
The ACC's in vogue. It's like
the ACC's in vogue. Clemson's in vogue because for that sensational run of being at the on top of the mountain that's not where Clemson is right now. So it's a good time to get your shots in.
And by the way,
in the media,
I think part of it, Alex, it's just me and call me a ACC homer if you want or whatever. I'm not. If anybody's not a homer of the ACC, it's me. But
everybody at the ACC office is like, Will is saying he's an ACC homer.
Yeah, exactly. I am far from an ACC homer. But it seems like ESPN, there's somebody that hands them. Like, you ever watch the TV show Newsroom?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so how they'll hand him the memos, like stuff that happens and what to say, and then he'll have the president up above. She'll want to dictate how things are going, and so she'll do things to make sure she's getting her agenda passed.
Yeah, you got your talking points.
I have no doubt in my mind that somebody at ESPN gets a phone call from somebody in Birmingham, Alabama, and that phone call, Birmingham, ESPN studios,
Birmingham to Bristol.
Yeah, not Bristol, Tennessee, Bristol, Connecticut. Somebody calls on that bat phone, if you will, and they make sure, and of course, I think you guys got a pretty good idea who that somebody is in Birmingham. Hanky. Anyway, sorry about that sneeze.
Did you say you needed a hanky? Is that what you said? You needed a hanky?
So, there's no doubt in my mind. I can't prove it, but there's no doubt in my mind he dictates ESPN's talking points. And that is why the ACC is crapped on constantly. And if you don't believe
it's an interesting thought.
Go watch the television show about the story of SEC football. And at the very end, on the very last episode of, it's a great documentary, by the way, they crap on Clemson at the very end. I mean, they use a big word that I had to go look up to see what it meant. And it basically meant the word, and I can't even say what the word is. I can't remember what it was. It's a big word.
It wasn't a curse word.
It wasn't a curse word. But what it says is that team that doesn't belong is what that word means. Because Clemson kept them from totally owning the college football playoff. And so it says that team that doesn't belong from the ACC. So even on their own network, they crap on the ACC. And because ESPN put so much money into the SEC, and now it is the premier thing for them. It's no longer on CBS, the big game on ESPN and ABC now for the SEC, that Greg Sankey makes sure those talking points. I can't prove it, but I know it's happening.
Will's got his tinfoil hat on.
I've been around
the
business
right
enough
before the show.
I've been around the business enough to know, and I don't care what Rich Davis says. I don't care what Kirk Herbstreit says. I don't care what any of those guys on college football things say. They're lying through their teeth. They're told what to say, and they have to crap on every other conference except the SEC. And the most favorite target is the ACC. And sometimes it's understandable why they crap on the ACC, and I get it. But other times I don't, and it's not fair. And Jim Phillips just continues to take it. He just continues to take it, and I don't understand why, but he does. He just takes it good. And Greg Sankey sits over there and laughs. He's like, yeah, I can bully. I just take his lunch money every day. I just take it. I go in there and I say, give me your lunch money. And if he doesn't have his lunch money, he gives him a wedgie. That's exactly what happens. I'm just saying.
You heard it here first. No, it is interesting that it's a consistent narrative, kind of regardless of what's actually happening on the field. There's always this same conversation. Even when Clemson was at the top of the mountain, you still heard this similar conversation just going on and on.
Yeah. Remember after Clemson won the national championship, like for a day or so, everybody was like, oh, Clemson. And then the next, like on the Tuesday after that, Paul Feinbaum comes on and says, well, Alabama plays in the SEC. Okay. Okay, Paul. They had guys that were hurt. They really weren't prepared for Clemson. Okay. That ain't what you were saying beforehand, Paul. So anyway, real fast before we get going here, want to get the scrimmage before we get out of here. We got a few minutes before we got to get out of here.
You got to talk for a second. My laptop's going to die. The plug came undone.
Oh, my goodness. Go ahead, dude. Do what you got to do. Turn your back. So Clemson had their scrimmage on Saturday at Memorial Stadium. It was guys, if you got questions, we appreciate you. If you want to ask questions on what we saw, what we heard from the scrimmage, we did hear this. The offensive line looked really, really good. That's coming from not only Dabo, but also coming from people who were at the scrimmage and talked about how good the offensive line looked and how good the offense looked overall. Kate Klubnik looked good, what we were told for the most part. He did have one drive where he had a couple overthrows in the end zone, the red zone. They ended up kicking a field goal for that one. But overall, Kate Klubnik looked good. The wide receivers, everything we're hearing, as I said, Alex, on our show the other day, Bryant Wesco is going to be a starter at wide receiver, and that's proven to be a point. Everybody talks about how he looks like a starter. There's no drop-off at all. He's making plays out there against no matter who he goes up against. So the run game looked pretty good. The offensive line looked good. Kate Klubnik commanding. Christopher Vazina, we heard, is having a very good camp. He's really turned the corner, and there's separation now between him at number 2 and Trent Pierman at number 3. We were told solid separation. So that's interesting to kind of hear that. So a lot of good stuff, we heard from the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, Dabo was extremely upset with the penalties. Defense, he says, too many penalties. His exact word, if we get penalized like that, we're going to lose. That's going to cost us a game. Too many offsides, just too many stupid penalties, as he called it. And then, but he still had there were still some big plays made by the defense. Khalil Barnes had an interception. The true freshman Jones had an interception. So there's some good signs. were shown on defense. I think the true freshman defensive end, Alex, help me out, Mayo.
Yeah.
He had a couple tackles for a loss. At one point, had 3 straight tackles. So he was kind of unblockable, but he also had one busted play that allowed a 50-yard run by Cade Klubnik. So don't want to have those happen.
50-yard run by Cade Klubnik, you say?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That guy. Yeah.
The guy that's not running as much, allegedly, this year?
Allegedly, exactly. So anyway, there's kind of the scrimmage. Alex, your thoughts on what you saw from the scrimmage?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear the offense being ahead at this point in camp, because I think kind of a consensus going in was maybe that the defense will be ahead at this point in camp, especially given what we heard in the spring. And
the defense dominated the spring.
Yeah, so to hear that the offense is ahead at this point in the spring is really interesting to me. To me, it kind of goes to what you've heard the players say about the way the summer went. The offensive guys sounds like they got really close over the summer. That they were doing a ton of stuff together, that they saw some progress over the offseason. And it kind of seems like if you're seeing the offense ahead of the defense early in camp, seems like those things are kind of paying off.
I think so too. One thing that came out of the scrimmage was the kicking situation again. And it seems like Hoosier. that's so he's called Hoosier, but his name is spelled like Hauser. Yeah. So I say it like Hauser because that's how I spell it. So it makes it easier for me to spell than Hoosier. But it sounds like Hoosier has separated himself a little bit from what we've heard from Richard Gunn. So Gunn did miss a field goal the other day. We heard Dabo mentioned last week that Hoosier was winning most of the days and seemed to be the more consistent guy at that point. So I think we're getting a separation there. It sounds like, just listening to some of the players talk, that there's a separation between Linthicum and Sewell at center.
Yep.
And that surprised me a little bit. I thought that would be more of a race, right? Between Harris Sewell and Linthicum at that center position. But it sounds like there's a little bit of separation there at the moment anyway, because according to Sewell, Linthicum's getting most of the reps at center. And so if you're getting most of the reps, that tells me the coaches think you're the guy and they want to make sure you're ready.
Yeah, no, that's definitely another interesting one. Got a question from Jay on YouTube. Who's cornerback 2, and will Sheldon Lewis miss a lot of time?
I'm glad you brought that up. So those who don't know, Sheldon Lewis is he suffered some kind of lower leg injury. We don't want to say exactly until we hear exactly what is wrong. We don't want to put out any misinformation, but we do know it's a lower leg injury. We do know he was on crutches yesterday and that he hasn't been able to put too much pressure on his leg. He went down holding his leg when he got injured. We were told in the scrimmage on Saturday. Well, the guy we hear as the one I just mentioned, one was Jones. Another one is Hampton. Ashton Hampton is a true freshman that he's really coming on. I mean, teammates talked about him yesterday. TJ Parker talked about the kind of plays that guy's making and how he's coming in and can hold his own right off the bat. So I say right now he would be in the running. Don't forget, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Jaden Lucas is injured again, but he's not injured like he was last year.
Right.
He's wearing a green jersey, guys, which means he's doing all the drills. The only thing he can't do are live drills, which means tackling drills. But he's fine. He's practicing.
Yeah, it's just a safety procedure. I mean,
just a safety
really,
procedure. He's getting all the reps.
Proceed with caution. That's all a green jersey is. So that's nothing to be, ringing your thumbs about.
Right. He's getting a lot of reps, and so I would say he's probably the number 2 receiver. So I think Avion Terrell starts on one side. I think Jaden Lucas now with Sheldon Lewis going down. I think Lucas starts on that other side, definitely. I think it was a battle between those two to begin with, and I still think Lucas was going to win the job just because of his experience. But now I think it's definitely his job going in, and I think Hampton's going to come up to be a guy that they're going to need to have some depth, to provide some depth. I wish we knew how long Lewis was gone. We don't know yet. We don't know if he's had a test run yet. I'm sure he has. What the results of that are, we don't know. I will tell you this much, though. We'll find out on Thursday because Dabo Swinney will be talking to the media on Thursday. He will be asked that question. And if it's not by somebody else, it'll be by me. That question will be asked. What's the long-term look for him, and have they gotten any results back, or anything of that nature? If I hear something before then, check out the Clemson Insider. We'll definitely try to get it up for you. If not, we'll just go with what Dabo tells us on Thursday.
Yeah, exciting things, man. We're right around the corner. It's kind of still, it's just interesting to me that the offense is ahead of the defense at this point. It's intriguing to me to hear what wide receivers are being talked about by players, because like today, Cade Klubnik was talking about Adam Randall kind of being the leader in the group, at least the motivational leader. I don't know what that means in terms of on the field, but usually when you hear players talk about other players being leaders, they're doing it on the field too. So that's interesting to hear. Seems like there's depth there. Seems like there's maybe some depth concerns opposite the receivers, which makes that kind of dynamic in camp interesting. That's one of the things you always have to take into perspective with what happens in fall camp, is you got to think about who those guys are lining up against. So if there's depth concerns at corner, your wide receivers should be looking better.
Good point.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens when the fire actually starts here in a couple weeks.
That's a good point. And I think one of the things I look at is, you said, okay, who's some guys that are some movers in this camp? Jaheim Lawson, I think, has been one of the movers in this camp. I think you're going to see him play probably more than people thought. I still think you got Peter Woods in on first and second down to stop the run. And then I think on third down, you're moving Peter Woods maybe inside, and you're putting Lawson in on the outside to rush on long situations, third long situations, second long situations. Hearing about Darian Mayo, though, this kid is 6'7". He's right now recorded. He's the tallest Clemson player in the history of the program. He's 266 pounds, so he's not little. Yeah. He and I've watched him, dude. He's like unbelievable to watch and practice. I mean, he's just, it's like seeing like PJ Hall or somebody over there. You know what I'm saying?
LeBron. That's like LeBron.
Yeah, LeBron over there rushing the passer.
6'7".
I mean, he's just an unbelievable athlete. He's got great speed off the edge. He's got such long arms. It's hard for especially college tackles to have to deal with him. When he gets fundamentally coached up by Chris Rump, which he's going to get.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to be unstoppable.
You got to think about having levers like that on the edge. Man, it makes it hard on a tackle.
It does. I mean, and if he can learn the techniques and moves that Rump's going to teach him, he's got a chance to be, I think, pretty good. And I think he's a guy that, yeah, he's still got to work on his run fits and things of that nature. That just comes with experience. Yep. But I think he's a guy you could put out there in certain situations. I think he's one of the freshmen you're going to see early against Georgia. They're going to put him out there and just see what he can do. Because he's going to clog up passing lanes with his long arms. Tell him, hey, get your arms up. Because all of a sudden he puts his arms up. He's 12 feet tall. And now the quarterback's got to try to get it over him.
Good luck, Carson Beck, throwing over that.
Exactly.
That takes out the flat. I mean, let's be honest. If you got a guy on the edge with levers like that, it eliminates the flat.
You don't even have him
strains the check down.
You just say, hey, Darian, just drop, just stay where you're at and lift your arms up. That's all you got to do. That takes away one half of the field for him. Yeah. So it's like, don't rush, just put your arms up. I'm sure he's going to rush, but there's different ways they can do some things with him. I think, wearing the number 49, by the way. So if you're old school like me, you think of the first person I think of wearing number 49 is Wayne Simmons. Nobody wore that number better, in my opinion. First round pick of the Green Bay Packers. I still see Wayne Simmons, God rest his soul, running down the sideline at Florida State with that 75-yard interception return for a touchdown back in 1989. It was a cool moment. Love to see 49 this year do it on his freshman year the way Wayne Simmons did it that year.
That'd be fun.
Wouldn't that be awesome if he did the same thing this year? Because, by the way, he can run too because he's so tall and lanky. He's got them long legs. Like he can outrun
goodness, you ain't got to move those levers that fast. You just gotta get a little space and you're moving.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. Like Trevor Lawrence, right? Because everybody's always surprised by how fast Trevor is. I'm like, he's 6'6". Why are you surprised by that?
Yeah,
he covers 10 yards in one
leg
move.
Span is 11 feet. I mean, what did you expect?
Exactly. So anyway, that's all the news we got from the scrimmage and everything. That's all we got for the show today. Appreciate you guys joining us. It's been a blast. I got to get Alex out of here so he can go eat supper. I know he's ready to do that. So for Alex Dodd, I'm Will Vandervort. We appreciate you watching us, and we look forward to talking to you next time on Bleav in Clemson Football.